You ever have one of those neighbors who thinks they're the sheriff of the whole block? Yeah. Well, meet Karen, the self-appointed queen of our HOA. She's the type that peers through blinds, like it's her full-time job, and keeps a running list of who's violating the sacred HOA bylaws. But what she didn't expect was that her little power trip would backfire in the most unbelievable way. It all started on a quiet Saturday morning when my wife and I had just moved into our new place. We were still settling in, boxes everywhere, and honestly just trying to enjoy a little peace. Then came the knock at the door. Karen stood there, sunglasses on, clipboard in hand. No smile, just questions. My wife, being busy and in no mood for small talk, decided not to answer. And that's when things took a wild turn. Karen didn't like being ignored. She marched back across the street, pulled out her phone, and called the cops on my wife. Yep, all because someone didn't answer the door. Her voice echoed through the neighborhood as she said, "She's acting suspicious. I think something shady's going on in that house." But what Karen didn't know, and what's going to make this story unforgettable, is that my wife isn't just any new neighbor. She's the newly appointed chief of police for the entire city. That's right. The woman Karen called the cops on is literally the cops. And let's just say, when the responding officers showed up and realized who she was, Karen's jaw practically hit the pavement. Stick around, because what happened next had the entire neighborhood buzzing. And Karen? Well, let's just say she learned a lesson she won't forget anytime soon. You're going to want to hear how this story ends. The HOA board took action, too. They launched a new initiative to educate the neighborhood about Wi-Fi safety, smart home setups, and what red flags to look for. It wasn't just about protecting networks, it was about protecting people. One neighbor even found a spoofed smart thermostat in their home that they'd never installed themselves. Greg's reach had clearly gone further than we thought. The weird part? No one ever saw Greg again. His house went up for sale a month later, cash buyer, no questions asked. The cops never confirmed if they tracked him down or if he just slipped through the cracks. That email he left behind still sticks with me, though. Watch your network. A warning, a threat, or maybe just a twisted goodbye. In the end, this whole thing started with a stolen Wi-Fi booster and ended with a wake-up call for an entire neighborhood. It taught me that even the smallest digital footprint can lead to something much bigger. And while I may be the 911 network coordinator by title, this reminded me that being alert, being aware, something everyone needs to practice. Because sometimes the real danger isn't offline. It's already logged in. So here's a little background to make sense of everything. We had just moved into this quiet suburban neighborhood after my wife's promotion was announced. She had worked her way up over the years with hard work, staying out of drama, and earning respect from every level of the department. Becoming the new police chief was a huge deal, not just for her, but for our family. We wanted a fresh start, some calm after years of long shifts and crazy hours. The neighborhood looked perfect for that. Clean streets, trimmed lawns, friendly smiles, or so we thought. Then came Karen. From the moment we pulled up with the moving truck, she had her eyes locked in. She was the kind of neighbor who introduced herself not with a welcome, but with a rundown of HOA rules. No flags in windows, trash bins must be hidden. Grass cut to regulation, high too. Get the picture. We stayed polite, nodded, and figured we'd lay low and avoid any trouble. But Karen wasn't the kind to let things slide, especially when she felt ignored that morning when my wife didn't answer the door. Karen must have thought something shady was going on. She stood on the sidewalk for a good 5 minutes, arms crossed, huffing like she'd been insulted personally. The next thing we know, she's on the phone with the non-emergency line, reporting what she called suspicious behavior. Didn't even try to hide it, talking loud enough for the whole street to hear. acting like some neighborhood detective. What she didn't realize is that the minute officers were dispatched, everything was about to shift. Karen had no clue that the mystery woman inside the house wasn't just a random neighbor, but the person they now reported to. The responding officers were just minutes away, and Karen, she was still pacing, planning her next move. When the squad car finally pulled up, Karen marched straight toward it like she had summoned backup for a major operation. You could see the pride in her walk, like she was sure she was doing the whole neighborhood a favor. The two officers stepped out, looking around casually. They weren't rushing, clearly expecting something minor. But the moment Karen started ranting about a woman refusing to answer the door and acting suspicious, their expressions shifted. Not in panic, but confusion. From inside, I peeked through the blinds and saw it all unfold. My wife, meanwhile, had no idea what was going on outside. She had been in our home office going through city planning documents and prepping for a meeting with city council. When I told her what was happening, she just blinked at me, calm as ever. "She called the cops?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "On me?" Outside, Karen was still going, dragging the officers toward our porch, pointing and muttering about how something isn't right with those two. But then Officer Daniels, one of the responding officers who had worked closely with my wife on a citywide outreach program, suddenly stopped walking. His eyes narrowed as he looked at our address, then back at Karen. "Wait," he said, "this house." Karen didn't seem to notice the shift. "Yes, that's the one. She won't even come to the door. She's hiding something, I know it." But Officer Daniels wasn't buying it anymore. He looked over at his partner, then back at Karen. "Ma'am, we'll handle it," he said, motioning for her to stay back. His tone changed, more professional, more alert. Something was clicking into place for him. Meanwhile, a few neighbors had started to notice the commotion. Some stood on their porches, watching silently. Others whispered, unsure what was going on, and Karen. She stood with her arms folded, still thinking she had the upper hand, still unaware of the storm she had just stirred up. Officer Daniels slowly made his way up our driveway, his partner a step behind. Their body language had completely changed, more cautious now, more respectful, almost like they knew what was coming but couldn't quite believe it. I opened the door before they could knock. Karen's voice rang out from the sidewalk, finally, like she'd just solved a crime. My wife stepped up beside me, dressed sharp, like always, button-up blouse, badge clipped to her waistband, calm look on her face. The second Daniels saw her, he stopped mid-step. His partner froze too. For a moment, there was total silence, just the soft sound of wind rustling through the trees. Then Daniel spoke, quietly, "Chief." You could hear the disbelief in his voice. Karen was too far back to hear the word clearly, but she noticed the shift. She squinted, trying to figure out what was going on, suddenly realizing the officers weren't looking at us like suspects anymore. My wife gave a small nod and said, "Good morning, officers. Everything all right here?" Daniels exchanged a look with his partner, both trying to keep their composure. Karen started walking closer, clearly irritated she wasn't the center of attention anymore. "Well," she said, hands on hips. "Did you ask her why she's hiding?" "I told you she was acting suspicious." This kind of behavior doesn't belong in our community. But the tension had changed. The officers weren't listening to her anymore. They were focused on my wife, clearly trying to process how they were just called to check on their new boss. Karen finally stepped close enough to catch a glimpse of the badge. She froze mid-step, her expression falling flat, confusion creeping into her eyes. Her mouth opened like she was going to say something, but no words came out. By now, neighbors were fully tuned in. Phones were coming out. Whispers turned into murmurs. Something big was about to break, and everyone could feel it. Karen stood there, frozen, eyes flicking between the badge on my wife's hip and the officer's suddenly stiff posture. For the first time since this whole thing started, she didn't seem so sure of herself. But before anyone could speak again, another voice cut through the air, a deep, annoyed one from across the street. "Hey, is this about the petition?" Everyone turned as Mr. Langley, one of the longtime residents, stepped out of his garage holding a stack of papers. He'd been quiet during most HOA meetings, but now he looked fired up. "I knew it," he muttered, walking toward us. "Karen's trying to use HOA rules again to push people out." Karen spun around, face red. "That is not what this is about," she snapped, but it was too late. The officers glanced at each other, curiosity piqued. My wife raised an eyebrow. "Petition?" she asked. Langley nodded. "She's been collecting signatures trying to get the HOA board to create a new clause, one that gives her power to vet new homeowners. Says it's for security, but it feels like something else." He looked at us. "You two just moved in, right? I think she thought she could scare you off before anyone caught on." The mood shifted again, sharper this time. Karen's face went pale. "That's a lie," she said quickly, her voice shaking. "This is about keeping the neighborhood safe." I didn't know who they were, but now more neighbors had stepped onto their lawns, listening. Murmurs grew louder. Some people looked shocked. Others looked like maybe this wasn't the first time Karen had pulled something like this. Officer Daniels looked at my wife, waiting. She didn't say anything yet, visibly unraveling. She stammered something under her breath, but her confidence had completely cracked. The neighbors were watching closely now, whispering to each other, and phones were still recording. My wife took a breath, calm and steady, then finally spoke. "Ma'am, I don't think we formally met. I'm Chief Olivia Ramirez. I recently moved in with my husband. I'd appreciate if in the future you just knock and wait." Karen blinked, speechless, her mouth opening but no excuse coming out. Officer Daniels stepped forward, speaking, now with full awareness of who he was standing beside. "We've got no cause for further action here. No laws were broken, and there's no suspicious behavior. In fact, if we're talking about strange activity, soliciting signatures for discriminatory HOA changes might raise some flags." That hit like a hammer. Neighbors gasped. Karen's eyes widened as she looked around, realizing just how alone she was. She turned toward Mr. Langley, trying to defend herself. "You're twisting things. I was only looking out for everyone," but Langley didn't back down. "You've tried this before. You ran the Johnsons off last year over parking violations, and you made the Patel family repaint their whole house because it was too bright. We've had enough." Karen looked like she might cry, but just as things seemed to calm, final twist dropped. "Wanna moved in a few months before you stepped forward holding her phone." "I recorded the whole thing," she said calmly. "I think the HOA board would be really interested in how Karen handles new neighbors." Karen looked like she'd seen a ghost. She opened her mouth, then just turned and walked away without another word, crossing the street and disappearing into her house with the front door slamming behind her. Officer Daniels gave us a polite nod. "Sorry about the trouble, Chief. Let us know if she tries anything again." My wife smiled, professional as always. "Appreciate it, officer. Let's hope this is the last time." The officers left, and the crowd slowly thinned, neighbors nodding to us, some even offering apologies on behalf of the neighborhood. Mr. Langley gave us a small thumbs up. "Welcome to the block," he said. Over the next few days, everything changed. Karen went quiet. No more early morning patrols with her clipboard. No more HOA threats. And as word spread about who my wife really was, neighbors began stopping but not to complain. but to introduce themselves properly. We even got invited to the next HOA meeting, where, to no one's surprise, Karen had stepped down from her self-made position of power. Looking back, it was one of those moments that reminded us just how quickly things can flip when someone underestimates the people around them. What started as a petty power move turned into a wake-up call for the whole neighborhood. And as for my wife, well, she just kept doing what she's always done, lead with strength, grace, and quiet authority. So yeah, Karen may have called the cops, thinking she was protecting her community. But she had no idea she was reporting her new boss. Talk about karma in uniform.